Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Katie, a member of the CK-12 team, and my colleague Felix and I will be running this Learning Management breakout session on CK-12 and Google Classroom. We're so glad you've joined us. Before we begin the core content for today's webinar, I just want to make sure everyone is comfortable with the Zoom webinar platform. You should see two different options on your Zoom screen, one for Q&A and one for chat. During the presentation today, if you have a question about CK-12 or our integration with Google Classroom, please post it in the Q&A window. That helps us track which questions we've managed to answer and which ones we still want to make sure we cover. The chat window is a great place for a community conversation. We'd love for you to introduce yourselves. If you're an educator, feel free to share where you live and the subject you teach. Just make sure in the chat window that you're sending any general posts to all panelists and attendees, and not just CK-12 or the panelists. That's kind of the default, so if you want to switch it and actually share where you're from, please make sure to swap that out. And while we don't anticipate any technical issues during our broadcast, if you are having trouble with your video or your sound, please feel free to let us know in Q&A or chat. Now, for those of you that have been involved in our webinars this fall, we've actually started creating these session resource pages, and we have one for today's session too. It can be found at tinyurl.com/CK12Google, and we'll have Star post that in the chat window as well, so you can just click on that link and open it up. This is a reference page that you can use to follow along during the presentation, because we'll go through some of these different pieces, and then you can also use it at a later date, especially to reference a chart that we're going to go through today. So, since this is meant to be a nice, short, sweet webinar highlighting our integration with Google Classroom, let's jump right into the content. But feel free to start using that Q&A window whenever you would like to, and to start posting in chat as well. So today's session is called Google Classroom Integration. For those of you that use CK-12 and Google Classroom, or you're using one and you're interested in incorporating the other, this is a great place to start. So if you are using Google Classroom, we're going to start by talking about the CK-12 modalities. So we'll give you a quick overview of the assigned modalities that you can use when you're working in Google Classroom. And you would be assigning them from CK-12 into Google Classroom. Felix will show you all about that, so you don't even have to worry about classes on CK-12. And then the next part that we'll go through is actually that integration. So what it means to assign a class versus share something specifically to a Google class, and then how you can see student progress in Classroom. So the first thing is, what are those modalities that you can assign? So the first is a text modality, what we call our reads. You can't assign a whole book because it wouldn't make sense to give a student an entire textbook, but any section within that textbook or a standalone section called a read, you could assign to your students, and that would kind of make sure that students knew what they were looking for and what they should be reading that particular lesson. You can assign videos that we have on CK-12 to your students. You can assign our Plix interactives and our physics and chemistry simulations. So those are, if you haven't seen them, I highly recommend that you explore those on our site. They're these great little quick interactives for Plix, or these full simulation kind of systems-based explorations as you're working your way through. You can also assign practice. So practice for CK-12 is adaptive, meaning that it adjusts to how students are doing. It gives them harder questions. It prompts them to read something if they're struggling. So plenty of options are within that, and we have over 150,000 questions in our system, primarily math and science based. And then you can even take those questions and you can customize them into quizzes, and you can assign those as well to your students. And the final kind of standalone modality is what we call our real world applications. So these take a concept in CK-12 and they actually apply it to some sort of situation in the real world, whether that's earthquakes or quadratic parabola options that are being applied to different structures elsewhere, all of these different options as you work your way through. And then our newest release this summer is what we call our Flexbooks 2.0, and that actually tries to pull a lot of these different modalities together into one sort of new platform that we're looking at. And in that case, you'd actually be assigning the read and the practice together. So any associated practice that goes with that read, you would work on, and there wouldn't be a separate piece for that read. But the other modalities kind of go as is, and then this option to assign them together. And this is the chart that I referenced. It is on that great reference sheet, so you do not have to memorize this chart. You don't have to remember it. You just can reference it at any point in time. So that first thing that I talked about, the adaptive practice, that is something where we set up a goal for students to actually get 10 correct. So it's really a learning option. That goal is a motivator for them as they work their way through questions, but some students will get super hard questions if they're doing well, and other students might get easier questions if they're struggling. They can turn that into you at any point in time, but the goal is 10 correct. So the percentage score that you would see is based on a completion goal. So if they turned in 3 correct, they would get a 30%. If they turned in 7 correct, they would get a 70%. If all of your students hit a goal of 10 correct, they would all have 100%. And in CK-12, that's the percent out of 100. If you set that particular assignment to be a different point value than 100 in your learning management system, in this case, Google Classroom, then it would just be the percentage of that score. So if you set that for, let's say 50%, and you got a 25 out of that, that would be the equivalent as the 50% correct on CK-12. So it does adjust accordingly in your learning management system. A quiz that you're creating would be a percent out of 100 on our system, or the same deal, the percent of the score chosen, but that is an assessment tool that you are using to assess your students, and they would be getting the number of correct out of the whole number of questions in that particular quiz. The other options are all learning modalities. So they basically give you full credit or no credit. Really, it's saying, did you check or read? Did you watch a video? Did you kind of read your Railroad application? So once you open it, you have the ability to submit that. For interactives, they have to try a challenge question or start interacting with the simulation before they will have the option to turn it in. And then once again, in 2.0, that read and that practice are combined together. So there's not a separate complete, incomplete score for the read. It's simply that you would access the practice through that read. So it assumes that you've accessed that read as well. And it's not scored separately. So that gives you an idea kind of the different pieces that you can take from CK-12. If you haven't explored some of these modality types, I highly recommend that you do so. And I think with that, I'm going to pass this off to Felix, who's going to take this live and go into Google Classroom and show you what that looks like.
Thank you, Katie. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Google Classroom webinar. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of go through the Google Classroom integration, and I'll cover some of the modalities types that Katie had mentioned, and then also our new Flexbooks 2.0 interface and assigning to Google Classroom from there. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. So first thing I'll do is kind of, hopefully you guys have all seen our homepage or had a chance to browse the site in some extent. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of go into our algebra subject and kind of bounce into graphs based on rules. And so right now I'm just going to show you kind of where you'll find how to assign these things to your classroom. And also, I guess for each different modality type, some of them have a few different placements, so I can go through that as well. So this is kind of what you'll see for pretty much every time you want to assign, you'll see this interface here. You are doing Google Classroom, so we'll go ahead and select that. And then this is going to ask you to connect to Google. So if this is your very first time, you'll see a prompt that's sort of asking you to give permissions to get your classes. So these are my Google Classroom classes that are listed here, and also to be able to grade your students' assignments and also post content in your classroom. So if this was your first time, you would have seen that dialogue kind of appear before getting to this. So once you approve that, you'll be able to list your classes here. And with that, I'll kind of continue. So up here, you can change the title to whatever you want. So that's pretty straightforward. This instruction section is what students will see posted along with the assignment. So I'll do it. You can also post links here. So if you wanted to include like a link to say another resource, you could kind of copy and paste that here, and then add a note to say, see the following. But basically, these are instructions for the students. And then down here, these are your classrooms that you can assign to. So in this, I guess in our sort of modality assign, we have a due date, which is optional. I'll show you later in the Flexbooks 2.0 how this has kind of changed a little bit. So I'll go ahead and leave the due date blank for now. And I'm going to go ahead and click assign. And so this will create the assignment and post it into our Google Classroom. So I'll go ahead and click on that, just so you can see that it's been posted. So this is the assignment that was posted, and this is what it looks like kind of when you open it up. This is just a link to get to the assignment, and what this link does is it logs you into CK-12, and then it loads the actual assignment. And so I will click on this. So it's going to ask you again to pick a account. So do that. And then so you might notice it looks a little bit different. So with these reads aside, so anything that's like a read, I'll show you later, we have something called a real world example. And even our videos appear in this format. So you see it doesn't have any of the navigation on the left and even the headings from the top. This is just the content itself, so it kind of is a nice place for the student to focus on just the content. Currently, for students, we don't have there's no button to turn this in. It's auto-graded, but we do plan on changing that in the near future. So students will actually see a button probably up here that says turn in, so they can actually click and turn it in to get the full credit for opening or accessing this assignment. And so I will close this. Actually, I'll go back to CK-12. Actually, one second. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the class just to show you what that looks like in the stream. So here, again, you see this link here, and then if you were to click on, oh, and also here's the link. So if you had other resources you wanted to
Felix,
post.
I'm just going to stop you for a sec. I think you
pulled
out of your sharing. So if you can reshare that screen, that would be great.
1 second. Can you see this?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so this is the stream. I just wanted to show kind of what it looks like on the teacher side of this and coming into the stream. So here's our title, again, our instructions. So if you had posted like a link to say like a Flexbook, you could have done that here and they would have that kind of, you know, within the assignment itself. And then again, here's the link to that assignment, and then just opening this up. This is where you would see like the scores for the students, and then we attach reports. So for a practice and quiz, you'll be able to see that here actually, and I could show you that. Oops. Okay, maybe not. All right, I will come back to that. So let me pick a different resource. So I'll do a Plix, because this one, the interface is a little bit different. So I'll kind of show you where you can, how you can assign to your class from here. So right up here, there's an assign to class button. Again, once you click on that, everything else is the same. And I'll do this. So again, we'll just give it a title. I'll skip that instruction field, and I will assign this to my class. And then it's going to be the same thing. So this is posted to my class, and that's okay. We'll go back and look at that a little later. And then also there's a real world example and a practice, which all have the same assignment flow. So again, the assigned class is here, which brings up that same sort of pop-up. And I will go back to this page. So basically, most of the things that are on here as a modality, if you click on it and you see the assigned to class sort of icon or button anywhere, you can click on that and that will assign it to your class. And then you can assign it to your Google Classroom. And I'm going to jump to the library, because I know a lot of you probably have your own custom resources like Flexbooks, or even if you're doing quizzes. So what I'll do is I'll actually go into let's do this geometry. Okay, 1 second. And I want to jump too forward into the 2.0. Okay, here we go. So we'll do this pre-calculus. Okay, so this is our, what we're calling, I guess, the 1.0 Flexbooks. Probably as most of you are familiar with this version of our Flexbooks. And as Katie mentioned earlier, you can assign this entire Flexbook. There's no assign a class. You can assign, and if we go into these sections, I can show you how to do that. But first, I'll kind of talk about the share functionality that we have and how it's different from assigning a resource. So if I click on this airplane, and you'll see that on a lot of pages, kind of down in the same corner, it'll bring up the share dialog. There's a share on this little classroom icon. So clicking on that, it's going to open up this sort of dialog that Google has given us. So you can also select classes, and then here it gives you a few options. So if you notice, the very first one is create an assignment. And if you do that, it's not going to be the same assignment that's linked to CK-12 in the same sense like we just saw. This is basically just a post that is a of type assignment. The difference between the two is that it doesn't talk to CK-12 the way that the assignments that you create through the other assign a class that I just demonstrated does. So I won't make it an assignment. I'll just do an announcement just to kind of show you what that looks like. And you may have seen this on other websites. So it's very much the same, action. And then, so you can schedule it, you can post it, you could save it as a draft, and then you can include links here. I'll just go ahead and post, and I'm going to click on view. So you can see this has, here it is posted here. If I click on this, it opens the link, and also the other difference is this link doesn't sign you in automatically. Our assignment links are set up to log you in. So that's another difference. If a student's not signed in to CK-12 and they clicked on this shared link, it's just going to take them directly to the website, but not sign them in. So if you've been sharing and you notice the kids aren't signed in, that's a reason why, is because these links will not automatically sign you in like our assignment links do. Okay, so that was the Flexbooks. I'll go back into the library and show you a quiz assignment, because that's probably another, actually, sorry. Let me go back to our Flexbook and show you assigning a section. So like we said earlier, you can assign the entire Flexbook. So let me actually go into a section. So you have to jump all the way down to like the actual section. So it can't be like a chapter. It has to be like a section itself. And there you'll notice it has the same assign a class. So if I were to click on that, it's the same workflow that we saw earlier. And then the other thing with the sections is, like we saw for that, the first read I had showed that had sort of the stripped down view. This will also show up in the same fashion. So you won't have any of the side navigation or any of this, just the content itself. So that's assigning a section of your Flexbook. If you wanted to share an entire Flexbook, I would recommend just using the share icon here, because that's gives you a little more flexibility. And there's a lot of more other pages that you can just sort of share if you don't need it to be graded, or you just want to get these resources to your students. Sharing is a good option, but just know that it doesn't do the grade pass back like our assignments do. And so let me switch over to my student side and switch my screen. Okay, so you guys should be seeing. So I'm logged in as a student here. As you can see, these are the same assignments that we saw. So for the student, they don't see, obviously who it's assigned to. If it's assigned to them, they'll see assigned, but they do get the same access to like this links and the access to this. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this guy. So this is going to sign them in. Excuse me. And then this is just sort of opening up that same read. Now, if I go back to this tab and I click into here, so you see that this has been auto-graded. That's what I was saying about currently there's, once they open this up and this loads, basically they get full credit for accessing it. And the change that we plan on doing is adding a button here that way they have to actually click on this turn-in button in order to get this grade. So that'll be changing, I guess, in the future. So that's one thing. But so yeah, the student has come here. This has been submitted, and that was just like a read. Basically, anything that's not a practice or a quiz, they don't get any special. It's full credit for the most part. I will actually scroll down because I do have. Okay, so here's a quiz that I had attempted just before the webinar. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. Okay. So this is a quiz that I had previously done. As you can see, it has a turn-in button. I'm going to go ahead and click try again. And one thing about the quizzes is you kind of have flexibility to set the number of questions, how many attempts that they can sort of do. You have the flexibility to do all that. And then I'm just going to go ahead and stop. So after they kind of go through the quiz, they can see sort of how they performed. They'll see, what they got right, what they got wrong. If they feel okay with that, they can go ahead and submit it. So if this was my first time, since I had already turned in the 75, if this was my first time, it would have submitted the 38. So now let me go into the same quiz. So you can see it has my old score here, but there's also this link that it posted. And this is the report that teachers would see. So currently this is the best attempt, so this is what we present. But if I click over here, then you can see like the previous attempt as well. And then just so you can, I will actually go back to the teacher view, just so you can see what that looks like for the teacher. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing my screen for the teacher. And I'm scrolling down to that same quiz. Okay, so for that same student, this is the one we were just looking at. And then over here is the report that was submitted along with that. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And so then you can also see the same progress. And so this we do for both quizzes and for practice. But like I said, for the other resources, there's nothing that we attach because they just get full credit. And there's no report actually tied to those reads or videos. And then let me go back to the student side of things. So that was a quiz. I'll go ahead and close this. Go back to this class. Then I think we did a Plix. We did do a Plix, so I'll show you what the Plix looks like. So Plix are one type of interactive that we have. It's usually presented with the question. There's a challenge me that shows up to kind of go along with the question. So in order for the students to get credit for this, they have to interact and attempt these questions. So as soon as they start doing the challenge answers, attempting the challenge questions, whether they get it right or wrong, once they start interacting with that, we submit the grade based on that. And so if I go back over here to my report, again, they get full credit, and notice there's nothing attached here. And then I will actually point out one thing. Let's see if I have a practice. Okay, I don't. But basically what I wanted to show was, matter of fact, I'll do a quick, actually, I guess I will go back to the teacher side of things, and then I'll show sort of the Flexbook 2.0 assignments. There's one thing I wanted to kind of point out when students are sort of accessing their assignments. Okay, so now I'm back on the teacher side of things. I'm going to go back to this home page, and I'm going to take a look at our new Flexbooks 2.0. So I just had clicked get started, and it scrolls me down to here. So I'll go ahead and go into Earth Science. So this is our new interface. This is our what we're calling Flexbooks 2.0. Kind of real briefly, this is our table of contents, and it expands. So now you don't have to sort of click into each chapter in order to see, you know, the topics that are there. You can kind of expand these and see them kind of up front. We have details on the Flexbooks as well. So the same information we were giving you before is also here. If I do this down here, there's an assign action here. So I'll go ahead and click on that. Again, we're prompted with the two options. I'll do Google Classroom. And so from here, you're going to pick whichever Google Classroom you're interested in. And then you can kind of pick from these what unit you would like to assign. So I'll go ahead and do this. And so this is a little bit different from what we had before. So now we're giving you the option to sort of bulk assign. So you still aren't able to assign an entire book, but you could, you know, assign this entire unit if you wanted to. And also another difference is, so we require a start date and a due date. So in order to assign this, if I were to do that, it's going to tell me that I have to pick a due date. So I will do that. And I'm going to actually move this to tomorrow. But you can select as many of these as you wanted to, give them all a due date. And I'm going to go ahead and click assign. And so that's going to get posted to my classroom. And let me open that up. So the interesting thing, if you guys aren't aware, so because I set that start date as a future time, it actually showed up as a saved post instead of in the normal feed. So I remember the first time I sort of did that, I was kind of shocked that I didn't see it. And then I looked in the saved post. So under the scheduled post, for those of you who aren't too familiar, may not have caught that. So that's just kind of like an FYI. If you're scheduling things for push them out a little bit further, they're going to show up here and not sort of in the normal feed until their scheduled time is kind of upon the student. So that's one thing. Let me now go back to this Flexbooks 2.0. So you see that you can do like a bulk assign. So you can go through here and pick as many of these as you want. This duration time is sort of an estimated time from our authors and DEs that we are suggesting that this particular lesson will take about a day's time to complete. Probably more of like a class session, I guess, for you guys. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of let's go into this one that we assigned. So students will also see this. Other ways to learn, we're still suggesting other resources that can go along with this. And I'm going to go ahead and click start. And so this is what this is what the read now looks like. There's a quick table of contents over on this side, options down here if you want to share. Related materials is again down here. Resource highlights if you wanted to change this font size and things like that. You can do that here. But the nice thing about what we've been doing with our Flexbook 2.0 is we have our practice sort of in line with more in line with our content. So now it's kind of off to the side. If I click preview, it will load that for me. And then if I click stop and I close it, it brings me right back to sort of this page. And so the student will actually see this same view. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what the students will see and also how they would submit this. That also has a practice here. So again, let me switch context to student. And refresh. Okay, and here's another example. So since this is scheduled, it's not showing here. So sorry to keep switching context on you. Let me go back to the teacher side and show you how to modify an assignment that you may have already assigned. So this was the one. So what I did was I clicked on it. Here's all the same. So if you wanted to change by default, we do 100 points. If you wanted to change the point value, you can. If you wanted to change or add a due date, you can. You can also change the title. And then here's a nice thing that Google does. They allow you to pick which students you assign to. So by default, when you create an assignment from our side of things, we always do all students. But if you wanted to come in and select, say, a few students, you can do that here. So you'd have to edit the assignment. And then, so what I'm going to do is change this to be today. If I can. It might not. Okay, let's see. That still probably won't work the way I want it to, but that's okay. What I can do is I'll just assign something else for today. So this is assigning it from a section. So before we assigned it kind of from the broader table of contents level, where you have the bulk assign, and here's similar to the same modality, sort of single assignment that we have been doing. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, just so we can see what this looks like for students. Same thing, start and due date are both required, and then also the instructions are there. So I just want to show you guys what this looks like for students. So I'm going to switch back to the student now and give this a refresh. Okay, so here we go. All right, so I'm going to click on this. So you'll notice this looks exactly the same as what the teacher saw, which was kind of different from what we saw for the reads and the Flexbook, the 1.0 sections, where it's kind of that stripped down tailored view. But again, the students get access to everything that the teacher saw, so they can still see the related resources here. And they have access to all the content. And so I'm going to go ahead and try to turn this in, and it's telling me, okay, I haven't completed the practice yet. So basically for these new Flexbook 2.0, where we do have a practice sort of aligned to or tied to this section, if they haven't done the practice, the student will have to complete that first before they can turn it in. So they'll have to go ahead and click Start Practice. So I'm just going to pick some stuff, which is probably really bad. Okay. And then if you haven't seen our diagnostics, we kind of jump into the students' session if we feel they're, if they need more assistance or guidance, or maybe they need to review some of the previous concepts. So, and then I'm just going to go ahead and click this. And I'm just going to stop this for now so you can see how it's turned in. So notice there's no turn in button on this screen. If you were assigned just a practice from, say, our modality pages, the student would have seen a turn in button here. But for the 2.0 style, where it's like a read and a practice sort of combo, the turn in is actually on the read page itself. So I click that, and then this will get submitted. And then the last, sort of as a wrap up, I'll just show you what that looks like. So I'll go over here. The score got submitted. We also got a report attached, and just like what we saw before, it's the same. So I guess with that, I'll stop. We're kind of running into our time. I'll stop. I'll hand it over to Katie, and then we will answer questions that you guys have.
Thanks, Felix. So I think just for time reasons, we're going to do a couple of things. I'm going to scale this back for a second and try to show our keynote for a sec, just so you guys can see what that looks like for a couple last pieces. So let me go ahead and share that. Share. Hopefully you guys can see that. And so we just want to go through a couple pieces. First of all, we had a lot of LMS questions in general, both for Google Classroom and elsewhere. You can find all of that information on the different learning management systems we do integrate with at ck12.org/tools and apps. So definitely check that out if you're unfamiliar or you're looking what else. But you can always share our resources using the URL. It's just if you want to assign them and see that grade report that you would need to work with an integrated learning management system. If you're curious about a lot of our resources, including the Flexbooks and other types of modalities we talked about today, you can learn more about those at ck12.org/overview. It also has a little PDF flyer with kind of a general overview of everything we offer. So that if you're new to CK-12, that's a great place to start as well. If you're interested in learning more about our other resources, if your school also uses Canvas or Schoology, we're doing a training on that. In November, we're doing some on Common Core Math. We had a couple questions on that. So if you're interested in those resources or more on adaptive practice and assignments, the general gist is kind of just that assign a class option to Google, and then there's a lot of nitpicky little things you can do and change. We do post the recordings of these webinars at the bottom of that webinar page, so ck12.org/webinars. So you're welcome to go there and see this recording. It'll be posted within about the next 24 hours. So you can see that as well. And then for those of you that are saying, wait, what modalities can go where and how does that work? This reference sheet has that assign to class option. It has some other pieces on there. So check that out, and that'll hopefully be a good place, or you can watch the recording afterwards. Some people have asked about our certified educator program. If that's something that you're interested in, you can go to ck12.org/certified. This is a breakout session, and so it's not counted as part of those live webinar pieces. So there's no assignment or anything if that's something that you're working on, but you are welcome to check that out and get started on that process. If you need credit for today, you can email jumpstart@ck12.org and we'll issue a certificate saying that you joined us today. And that way you can use that with your school if they accept that for credit. And then kind of the last thing I want to talk about is we always try to make these more helpful to users as they're asking questions. So if you have any comments on today's webinar, please feel free to use that URL, CK12webinar 1819 for the 1819 school year, and let us know what we can do to make this even better for next time. And so what I think is going to happen is I'm going to switch this back over to Felix. I think a couple of you mentioned that he was in an older version. We used that this summer, so hopefully he'll update that and we can see that and access it as you're going through. But we want to stay on and answer any questions that have come in. We have a couple more that we haven't answered that we want to answer live. And then any of you guys that have all your questions answered, you're more than welcome to go ahead and sign off at any point. But thanks for joining us. So Felix, it looks like the first question was about multiple classes. So can you assign work to multiple classes? Does it have to be everyone? Can you do just a single student? So if you could talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
Sure. Can you assign work to just 2 for classes? Okay, so yeah, you can assign to, I guess, just a couple of classes. Individual classroom, individual students. Okay, so I can show you that. I'll just do this since I'm here. So multiple classrooms, I'll show you that. So I was just choosing one, but you can choose all 3 if you wanted to. And I will just assign that. And then so by default, what we do is we assign to the whole class. And then I can show you these assignments. And also I updated to have the classwork. So I know some of you had asked about that. So classwork here, stream here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to modify one of these assignments. So I'm going to edit. And then if you want to assign it to an individual student, then you would just pick the ones that you wanted to see this assignment. So I guess to get the individual assignment level, you'd have to go to the assignment in Classroom. But when you're assigning at least these, anywhere you have this assigned to class, for like our modality types and anything that's a Flexbook 2.0 assignment, you can assign it to multiple classes. Okay, and so yeah, so you can assign to multiple classes, and then when you want to customize and maybe just select a few students, you go into Google Classroom. If you're using the new classwork, you'll do it all under the stream. Over here, I guess you could still do it here. So in both places, actually. But I did it from the stream. You click edit, and then this drop down here where it says all students, which is what we do by default, you can uncheck and then just start selecting just the students you want in your class. And then the other one was a feature for the turn-in button. I'm assuming you're talking about our non-practice, non-quiz assignments. So that probably later next year, mid next year sometime, maybe in the spring. If it comes out sooner, then I guess we could send out, maybe we'll send out a notification saying we've done some changes. But I think right now we're looking at probably like springtime. We still have a few back to school items we're trying to get out, and with the new Flexbook 2.0, we're still adding a few improvements. And then
Felix, by next year you mean 2019, like this coming spring, not a year out.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, sorry. That's correct.
Thanks.
Sure. And then, so Kyle.
So I think the
Okay,
last.
I see what Kyle's talking about. Yeah, let me go into one of those. So Kyle. So if you're assigning an individual section within the Flexbook 2.0, then you can do multiple. Classes. But if you're doing it from that table of contents where we have the bulk assign, you have to do it based on the course or your class, your Google class. So there you would pick your class first, and then you can bulk assign to that single class, and then you'd have to kind of rinse and repeat. And I can show you that too. So from here, you can select multiple classes, and then on this, go into one of these. And then from here, you're only getting the option to select one, because we're doing a bulk assign potentially for like the whole unit. So for here, you would select the sections that you wanted and then click assign. And then once that's done, you could go back and select a different class. So from this flow, you'd have to kind of select your class, rinse and repeat, from that section, you can select multiple classes. Yeah. So not a bug, but if that's something we look to improve, we can sort of address that. But I think the idea was because of the bulk assign feature, it was easier for us to do it based on just a class and not having too many things going on in our system, to kind of make the assignment creation process a little faster technically on our end.
Thanks, Felix. And Kyle or anyone else, if you get an error in the system for something that should be working correctly, feel free to email support and they can see what might be triggering any error. We'll get it fixed right away. But yeah, as you saw there, Felix was able to click multiple classes and should be able to assign that content to all of those classes, even for 2.0. So I think we are out of questions. We will make sure to post here. We did have actually one last question that I just want you to kind of, or I can reference once again. The difference between sharing and assigning: if you share to your class, you get 0 score reports for that. If you actually want a score report, you do need to assign to your class versus simply sharing that to your class. So that's probably the biggest difference. If all you do is need your students to have access to it, feel free to share, but anything else should be assigned directly to them. And then our last question is asking about homeschool resources. All of these resources are available to use across various schools and school levels. You are welcome to access any of them. There aren't ones specifically for homeschool, but all of those books and other resources are great for learning, and we have many homeschool students that do access our resources for that. So I think if there's something specific, Kyle's asking about the ability to assign a read to all classes at once. I think that option to click all of them at the same time is available there. If you're not seeing that or that's not working, then we want to make sure that for the customization we do, that especially if you're having classes across the board, it wouldn't necessarily make sense to assign your physics homework to your chemistry class as well. So right now you do have to select which classes you want. But we will consider that or any other suggestions for the future. I think with that, we're probably going to wrap this up. If you do have any other questions, you're welcome to email support@ck12.org, and we will work through any potential issue you might have or answer your questions, or they will forward it on to the appropriate person to be able to answer it. But thank you all for staying with us, and we hope to see you on future webinars. Have a great day.